Greetings. I'm Laurie Taylor, and I'm here presenting on behalf of the Library Press at UF team with Perry Collins, Chelsea Johnston, and Tracy MacKay-Ratliff. And we're here to share about learnings from our first virtual book launch. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about context, who we are, and then our story of an epidemic of polio as told during COVID-19, and then our story of our first virtual book launch. We'll talk about promotional elements and considerations for books with virtual book launches, virtual author signing, and best practices, including activating our communities for promotion and outreach. So first, who we are as the Library Press at UF. The Library Press at UF engages in scholarly publishing as a collaborative endeavor. The Library Press publishes scholarly, educational, and creative works with an emphasis on promoting public access to scholarship and ethical practices in scholarly publishing. The Library Press complements the work of the University of Florida Press to collectively contribute to the shared missions of the Libraries Press and UF. And we partner with UF scholars and external collaborators whose goals align with our expertise and mission on open access publications, including works based on the library's unique collections, with a focus on collections that promote inclusion and justice by highlighting overlooked or marginalized experiences and perspectives. And the Library Press brings new books to life simultaneously as digital and available as print on demand. So our most recent book is My Scrapbook of My Illness with Polio by Edna Black and Lassie G. Black, with contributing editor Nina Stoyan-Rosenzweig and designer Tracy MacKay-Ratliff. Polio, an infectious disease caused by a virus, became epidemic in the United States in the early to mid 20th century. The book is written by Lassie Black, Edna's mother, and written in Edna's voice in the form of a journal. Edna caught polio in 1946, before the height of the epidemic and the introduction of the vaccine. The book does a wonderful job of making the story of polio come alive. The simplicity of the journal form allows the story of a patient and disease to take shape. In doing so, the narrative speaks to research in medicine, narrative, and the humanities, and specifically to the field of medical humanities for collaborative work to support patients as people, for how we enable and support health and wellness. So for this book, we had our standard promotional considerations: ensuring metadata is in place for findability and discoverability of publications, SIP, MARC, Onyx, ensuring publications are accessible and discoverable online, and as applicable when we do print and print on demand through the UF Press. Digital postings, we do monitor slides in all library locations, social media postings in collaboration with the social media manager, print materials in collaboration with communications and facilities for printing posters in the libraries, bookmarks, book plates, and calendars from the books. For other promotional considerations, we always work in collaboration with the library core collaborator liaison and communications and development when applicable. We're also lucky that the dean is the director of the Library Press at UF. She's always happy to help introduce authors at our events. So other activities, we have textual or video Q&A with the author and creators, targeted outreach to groups identified in collaboration with the library liaison for the publication and communications, activating the Library Press at UF community networks for targeted outreach to known groups, and events, always in collaboration with the lead library collaborators. So My Scrapbook of My Illness with Polio was released in March 2020. The initial event discussions, we thought we would do events at the Health Science Center Library, at UF Senior Living, and other more public areas, as well as in more scholarly venues, academic events, conference presentations. We knew we wanted to have a really fun event. It's a special, very sweet book. And so we wanted to have a book signing with probably tea and cookies. So the fun and that sort of human connection was always part of the plan. With the book released in early March and the library is going fully remote by the end of March 2020, we were in the situation of having two pandemics, two stories of vaccinations. And as COVID continued on, from the early expectations of a short lockdown to the recognition that we had to have a vaccine, this story became an activist work of past is present and arguing for vaccines and vaccinations we knew we needed to discuss. So given the timeliness of the topic and the immense interest from groups across the libraries, we pursued this as a virtual session. This was set up in collaboration with Nina from the Health Science Center Libraries, Communications and Development. We knew we wanted to have a book signing, and Tracy had the idea of a virtual book signing by sending signed book places. So you can see this is the announcement for the special conversation on the history and the fight against polio from a child's perspective. And it was done as a conversation with Edna and Nina. So you can also see that people can access the book directly online. There's also the print on demand option from the press. And we have, in all of our messaging, we shared that a complimentary custom book plate signed by the author could be requested. And so this was in the messaging for signing up for the webinar, post-webinar, and in other promotional materials. So for the signed book plate itself, it's a printed book plate designed as 3x5 acid-free paper on heavier stock, selected as off-white, and with adhesive to make sure it would actually properly stick to the book without damaging it. For the process, we printed the book plates in the libraries, brought them to Edna for her to sign, and then brought back to the libraries to mail. Again, people were notified to contact the libraries to request the book plate, and the libraries mailed out the book plates. So some of our learnings from our first virtual book launch, we need the full large event team. While webinars, a Zoom official and other methods are great, plan for additional training. It's different from meetings. We need many helpers, best to support the author speaker with a facilitator for chat and Q&A functions and other facilitator roles. So in our first virtual book launch, it was a conversation with Nina and Edna, so there was embedded support there, but Edna also had someone on site in the room with her for local technical support. That's incredibly valuable just to make sure everything runs seamlessly. Messaging on the webinar, use the opportunity to include links and contact people to really invite people in to make those connections that we would normally do in a physical in-person book launch. The printed book plates are really exciting. These were a fantastic idea to get people to think about the webinar situation as a real book launch and as an experience. Of course, you need good paper, you need adhesive. The design template is really quite simple, including a book cover, a border, the press logo, and space to sign. And then also to act as whole workers for the library and project collaborators and in relation to our communities. This was particularly important for this webinar because the webinar, the best date was for all involved was November 6, 2020, only slightly after the election on November 3rd and before the results had been called on November 7th. While we knew it would be difficult to promote any time in fall 2020, we also knew that this was a global story of polio and a local story of a woman whose history was part of Florida history for her personally and for polio. For some of these deep connections, Edna's mom, Lastly, was the first woman to attend the University of Florida full-time, and there's a lot more family history that is also Florida history. Tracy knew about the importance of Lake City to the fight against polio, and so she connected with her personal networks to get front page coverage of the webinar on the main newspaper in Lake City. As a small press, we will always need our full community for events, whether in person or virtual. We also always need to bring our whole selves to the process because when we do, we can be small and mighty, exemplifying exactly what our press was made to do. So for learnings from our first virtual book launch, we've already applied some of it with another virtual launch party, which we had on March 17th. This was for the Migration, Mobility, Sustainability, Caribbean Studies, and Digital Humanities Institute, the Open Educational Resources site launch. So many in the libraries contributed to this institute, which in May 2019 brought together over 40 participants to discuss digital pedagogy, digital collections, and open educational resources. Over the past year, Perry Collins has led graduate students Hannah Toombs and Brittany Mistretta in gathering feedback from participants and working to co-develop a new web publication to feature this work as a resource for educators under the library press at UF Publishing and Print. So during the March 17th event, Perry led the event to formally launch the website and to learn more from participants about their experiences and the Institute's impact on their teaching. This session built on our learnings for our virtual launch party and informed best practices for a rich, deep, collaborative publication like the NEH Institute OER site. So after sharing briefly these two examples, I just wanted to reaffirm our goal for the session, which is to identify and evaluate best practice options for virtual book launches as part of overall promotional practices. We hope we've done this and given a fun example of how this worked. We also have another goal for this session, which is our request to you. We want to invite you to share methods for signed copies in remote and virtual environments and how to share your best practices for virtual events. What have we missed? What have we not even considered? What are your ideas? We want this for a very good reason. We have another book coming on Cuba's presence in non-Cuban postage stamps and envelopes. So for this, we invite you to please share your ideas directly with us. Our email address is here. And also we have a Google Doc set up. We'd love to start logging different people's ideas and methods so that we can grow together as a community and how we do virtual launches for books and for other publications. Thank you so much for your time today. Looking forward to the discussion.